No, that was hard to watch.
It's hard to watch. It's very hard to watch.
Yeah, both of us have interviewed him too. That is hard to watch. And in his interviews with us, he denies having anything to do with this.
Right. He denies ever knowing or meeting Michael Vaughn. Let's assess this interview. Let's look at whether this is true.
November 2022.
So the argument against this being valid or accurate or true would be that they didn't find Michael's body. There's different types of confessions, and there are confessions that are called compliant false confessions, which are essentially elicited from law enforcement. This is the classic example of a confession that somebody makes when they're in a room with a really angry law enforcement officer, or at least a hard-nosed law enforcement officer for like 12 hours, right? And they reach a breaking point and they confess and they say, I committed the crime, or here's where the body is, or those are the most common types of false confessions. They're called compliant false confessions, and they're almost always related to police interrogation methods of coercion, and so we don't have that. It's fair to say there's no coercion here. There's really no evidence of coercion here, so that would lend credence to the fact that this is a valid confession of sorts, if we call it a confession. I mean, he's not saying he committed the crime, but he's saying he knows where the body is, which obviously means that he is associated with this crime, whether he's a co-conspirator or whether he was involved in the murder or the death of Michael, right? It's for our purposes, it's all the same.
Right.
So if you rule out coercion and a compliant false confession, there's another type of confession that's called an internalized false confession. That's also related to police coercion during interviews. We can rule that out again because there's no coercion. That happens when police officers are doing a long interview. They put in a lot of pressure on a suspect and they start feeding the suspect lies about what they know or misinformation about what they know. And then the suspect starts believing some of those lies. If by a process of elimination, it certainly looks like this confession is accurate and valid and true.